Well, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, tracking law, workers' compensation, medical malpractice, dog bites, and all other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, board member, or business partner of this podcast. Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association for Women Lawyers, GOLD for short, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, St. Andrew Rowing Club, Georgia Spanish Chamber of Commerce, and Georgia Council of Chiropractic. In today's episode, I have two special guests, personal injury attorneys Gerard Briceno and Cameron Roberts with Chiefs Briceno Attorneys at Law based in Peachtree Corners, Columbus, and Auburn, Georgia. Today, we'll delve into some exciting topics about two things. First, lawyers and referral process, and two, clients considering legal representation. At the end of our episode, I'll have fun pop-up questions, so stay tuned. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding podcast, Gerardo and then Cameron. Please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners. Tell us, where did you start and how did you get to where you are today?
Thank you for having us, Laura. So I'm Gerard Briceno, one of the partners here at Chief Briceno, and I started this law firm back in 2013. Before that, I was a government attorney with Homeland Security and ICE, and I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. So I had a nightclub, a restaurant, construction company, and finally somehow landed on a law firm. But here we are, and we've been growing over the past 11 years, and we focus on personal injury here in Georgia. And here we are.
I love it. So I didn't know about the nightclub and restaurant. We'll have to talk about that. We'll cover that on the next episode.
That's the
I love it. That's a very important topic. I just recently had somebody, Carlos Dominguez from Florida. So he specializes in nightclub shootings or, craziness of nightclubs. So that'd be interesting.
Luckily, I didn't have any of those.
Yeah, thank you, God. Exactly. So let's talk about attorney referrals and see how you understand them. What are the most common reasons attorneys choose to refer cases to other firms? And how can this process benefit both the referring and the receiving attorneys? Cameron.
So we, for the returning and receiving attorneys, we get a lot of referrals. We work the cases from the beginning to the end. So we always like to say, we will tailor the case to fit the needs of the referring attorney. If the referring attorney has a special relationship with the client and maybe wants to continue with the client communication, great, just tell us what you need. If they want to just give it over and say, just update us, great, we can do that too. So we like to talk to the attorney and figure out exactly what they want, what their expectations are, and we will handle it from beginning to end. So we're not one of those referring firms that's like, sure, we'll take the case and stamp our letterhead on it and then be like, oh, can you handle this discovery? Oh, wait, can you contact the client? Oh, wait, can you do this? If we are referred a case, we will handle it from the beginning to the end. And as much as the attorney wants us to handle or wants to take over for him or herself, we are open to that as well. So we will handle it all the way through in accordance with that attorney's needs.
That's wonderful. And that's the way to do it, actually, properly. So when we talk about building trust, how can law firms establish trust with the referring attorneys to ensure that they feel confident in referring cases, Gerardo?
Well, I think first and foremost, you want to do a good job. You want to build the case right. You want to manage the case properly, and you want to keep them in the loop and pay that referral fee when it's time. Referring attorneys shouldn't be having to hunt down a referral fee or following up or asking over the course of a year or two what's going on with few answers. And I think that's somewhere where we really have tried to focus.
And what's the common referral fee? Is there a standard in the industry? Does it depend on the state?
It depends. The most lawyerly answer I can give, it depends.
I love that one.
Yeah. And whether the case was pre-lit, whether it was in litigation, it just kind of, it changes.
It changes, varies. Got it. So let's talk about communication practices for a moment. Gerardo, what in your opinion are the best practices for maintaining open communication with clients and referring attorneys throughout the case process?
I think we have to have checkpoints, and it's what we try to implement here. At least with our clients, we have a 2-week checkpoint. Every 2 weeks, we're trying to communicate with them, giving them an update, especially in those early stages where the stress is high, the
Mhm.
anxiety is high, the pain is high. A lot of things are happening early on, and clients sometimes that's when they feel the most at need. As the process and the cases evolve and develop, then that anxiety starts coming down once they see that one, they're starting to get better. They've already seen partial results. They know, and they've gotten to know us over the past few months, and now they feel comfortable with that. It's the same thing with the referring attorneys. It
Mhm.
depends on who they are,
Mhm.
but some prefer monthly updates. Some just want to hand you a case and never hear about it again. Others prefer weekly updates. So,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what Cameron was touching on, whether it depends on the referring attorney and what their parameters are. We try to go ahead and meet those.
Mhm. And what types of cases, Cameron, do you handle overall at your law firm?
So we are immigration and personal injury. So she is spearheading our immigration department. So that kind of speaks for itself. All things immigration.
Mhm.
And for the personal injury, Will Cheese and I handle that department. And so we do everything from, of course, run-of-the-mill car wrecks, negligent security, slip and falls, dog bites. And we had a case recently, which I get a lot of my cases from South Georgia because I spent a lot of my time there in my career. There's cow cases out there.
Oh,
you may
cow
have
cases.
a cow that's run
Wow.
afraid.
Okay.
And you have to, and people have hit the cow, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, the cow and the person are injured or, otherwise.
Mhm.
And so there's all kinds of cases, anything really regarding injury, regarding, communication or negotiations with an insurance company. And we help the client find insurance.
Mhm.
There's a lot of cases we get where there's an absolute injury, but where's the insurance to be found to
Mhm.
cover it,
Interesting. So cow cases and deer cases and horses, does that fall into the same category of animal
It
cases?
does. It does in a way. It does in a way. So, although I think here in Atlanta, you might get hit by a deer.
Yes.
I've been in a stoplight and a deer hit me. I was
Oh,
like, did I
goodness.
just get hit by a deer?
Oh no, how is that possible? But it is very possible.
It
But
happens.
on the way here to your office, I saw 3 little deer literally
Yes,
crossing the street. I
they're
live by the river. Yes.
All,
So-
all uninsured, of course.
No, that's right. Man, that needs to change soon. So how do you, Cameron, manage the expectations of referring firms regarding the level of involvement and communication they can expect when they refer a case to you and your law firm?
Like communication to the firm or to the client or both?
Both.
Okay. So, we take the case in as if it's our own, family member, our own parent. I'm sure all of us in the personal injury industry have taken over families and things like that. And I like to think that we treat all of our clients in that way. So, with the client, we have our portal, which is a huge software availability to them because they can text images, they can text if they're a busy mom or dad and their parents and they have little kids at home and they just don't have time and it's 8 o'clock at night and maybe they're about to jump into bed, they can shoot, I just remembered this and shoot it off in a text or to the portal. And then also, if you're busy with your work life and you don't have time to really sit down and talk to your attorney regularly. So we have different means of communication in order to get in touch with us, in order to share information with us, in order for allow us to share information with you, in order to accommodate your needs. So we usually meet with the client and find out what is your lifestyle, what is your schedule, what is your day to day, and how can we better communicate with you? Are you email? Are you do like the portal idea? If you're an older person, you may want a phone call, you may want in-person meetings. So we like to find out, like G was talking about in the beginning, what the client, who the client is, what the client's needs are, and what would best fit their schedule. Because at the end of the day, they came to us, so we want to accommodate their needs. And it's not, hey, we're a lawyer, so you just have to come here on this hours at this time. No, we're a different type of law.
I love that.
So we want to make sure that we fit with the client's needs. If we have to meet you at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, or if we have to drive down to you, we're going to make that happen.
That's wonderful. That's very, very important. And the portal you had mentioned, is that locally made, custom made for your firm, or is it one of those that you use, like many attorneys use nationwide?
I'm going to defer to Gerard. He is the IT guy. I'm the one out of my office. Like, is there anybody under the age of 25?
I would be the same way. I'm the same way.
It's a custom portal that through our case management software where clients can readily at 24 hours a day just contact through the portal and upload documents, receive documents, and that's so it's not I didn't develop it myself. It's through our case management software.
I was going to say you'll say that.
No.
That's in the next life, maybe. So let's shift our focus now to the case management. Gerardo, can you walk us through the steps your firm takes to ensure that referred cases are handled comprehensively and professionally?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it starts at intake, right? We have to know where the case came from. We keep good track of that, but we don't treat them any differently than we would in a brand new case that originates. Kind of like Cameron said, we take it in as our own, but we do document. And of course, if we have that established relationship with that referring law firm, then we kind of know what the steps are for them. And if it's somebody that we haven't really worked with before, that we haven't heard from, that just maybe got our name from a different lawyer or another provider, then we have to establish that line. We start the internal process, but then we contact that firm and say, hey guys, this is how we do things. What do you need? It's all about expectations, right? So we try to make sure that we know what their needs are so that we can meet them.
That's great. Cameron, we all know that case updates are very important. I think you both mentioned that. How often should referring attorneys expect updates on the cases they're referred, and what should be these updates, or what should these updates include?
Well, I think it's definitely, what the referring attorney desires. You may get an attorney where you're sending them updates. Hey, I just filed. Hey, we just got discovery. Hey, and the attorney's like, I'm good. Just let me know the next step. And we want to listen to their needs too. So we're not either overloading them and overwhelming them with information, or they feel like we're not giving enough. But typical, if it's, the referring attorney says, hey, just do normal, do whatever you normally do, which is probably more often than not. What I usually say is any of the pivotal points in the case. So, if it comes to the point where we're getting denied liability, maybe disputed liability, I'll update them on that. Hey, I'm bringing in an expert. I don't spend any expenses until I make sure that their referring firm and us are on the same page. So, hey, I think we're at the, standstill. This is the only way I think we can get over it. What do you think? And the case is still very much their case, and any main decisions, especially money spent on the case or just the strategy and the way it's directed, then I definitely want to bring them in on it to make sure that they're up to speed, and if they have any input they can give it then, or they can say, do with what you want, I trust you. And that's fine. So I'll just update them as things transpire, and the case is filed, if we did discovery, if there's upcoming hearings, anything like that. I just update them in accordance with the next step in it, unless they tell me otherwise, and then I can update them in accordance with how they prefer.
That totally makes sense. When we talk about the tailored approaches, Gerardo, how do you customize your approach to each referred case based on the unique needs and preferences of the referring attorney, or do you do that at all?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we've been talking about. So examples we keep saying are some firms really don't need or want any kind of updates along the way. When it comes to the communication, there are other firms that want to ensure that we pursue certain angles on a case. They're like, look, if I had time for this, if I had the bandwidth, if I wasn't referring this case out, I want to make sure we pursue this dram shop element of a case or this other aspect of negligent security or whatever's going on. And we listen to that. Obviously, we see what's in the file, that the facts lend themselves to that opinion. We can discuss that with the lawyer and try to pursue the angles that they would have otherwise pursued if that's what they want.
And when referring cases, attorneys must address some level of a concern. What are some common concerns that referring attorneys have when they hand off a case? And in your experience, how can those concerns be alleviated and mitigated, Cameron?
I think probably, well, in my personal experience, personal and professional experience, one of the biggest fears is that you refer a case and nothing happens to it. It gets forgotten, or I would say that's probably the number one concern, which is probably aggressive, but it happens. And I think the second concern is that they're not going to communicate with their client. And then your client calls back to your firm and they're like, hey, I haven't spoken to anybody. No one's talked to me in 6 months. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then, then it creates an awkward situation with the referring firm and an awkward situation between you and the client, because nobody wants to say, hey, they're not communicating. So, I think that's probably the number like 1 and 2 for the biggest concerns. And the way we, get around that is we just keep the lines of communication open. We say, hey, if it's a referring attorney that we text with, it's a good friend of ours, I'll just shoot text updates, something quick, because I think attorneys' biggest problems is time life balance. So if there is a good means of communication that both parties agree upon, like, hey, text me, that's probably number 1 with attorneys. Some prefer emails so that it shows up and their paralegals are documenting it. Make sure to copy this one on it. We just want to make sure that whatever preferred means or method of communication they like, we just continue on that, because I think that would be the easiest way, just getting constant updates. Because I don't think that it's necessarily that attorneys are just avoiding it. They probably just forget. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and we're all bad about that. And so that way, if we, go ahead and build in a structure that kind of keeps us a reminder, like our software system will remind us, hey, update the attorney every 2 weeks. If that's what they say, I get an update, goes on my phone, goes to my computer. It basically infiltrates my life until I check it off.
Yes.
And I want that.
Exactly. You want to be on top of it. Absolutely. So you mentioned before we started our live conversation that that your law firm avoids the grunt work. Can you elaborate on what you mean by grunt work and how your firm ensures that referring attorneys are relieved of this burden, Cameron?
I guess basically just when you say like grunt work, I'm assuming you're talking about like discovery, things like that, all that stuff.
Tedious
Yes,
tasks.
so
That's how I translate. I had to look it up. I'm Lithuanian. I was like, what is, I asked my son, he's like, Mom, this is like my senior is like, I don't know how to explain, but like something that you don't want to do is like, tedious work.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Chores, you know,
Chores,
kind
yeah.
of like just kind of
Mhm.
like numbing and like this is just
Yes.
repetitive kind of feeling about it. Well, you know, we like to, whenever we take in a case, we do everything. So we definitely let the lawyer know, you know, if there's a motion for summary judgment filed, it's not like, oh, this is your case,
Mhm.
it's on you guys. No. We assume it's on us unless we hear otherwise, you know, and the discussions will be had to make sure that we all are on the same page.
Mhm.
Same thing with motions to dismiss, anything like that that comes into play. But we handle discovery, research, investigation. We will find the experts. You know, we have bilingual, trilingual staff. We have
Mhm.
Portuguese, Spanish, English. We have people at our fingertips that can also speak Hebrew. So there's
Amazing.
all kinds of ways that we can make sure everything is done in accordance with what they need done. We have paralegals, we have assistants, we have case managers, we have everything in place and all the structures so that whatever the needs are for that case, it's handled. So regarding, you don't have to do anything. We're not going to back to you and say, hey, just handle this discovery. It's due in 2 days. Bye. You know, we will get it taken care of in plenty of time. And then afterwards, the beautiful thing is we will share it with you. We will then say, this has been completed, just so you know. They may not even know, you know, that that's come about, but it's just, this has been completed. This is our responses. Here you go. Let us know what else you need.
Wonderful. And Gerardo, I know when I met you years ago, it was just you and another attorney, and you had Andressa and you had your mom working at the front. So I think I want to say like 5, 6 people. How many people, how many attorneys and how much staff do you have nowadays?
We are at 4 attorneys and about 18 staff.
Wow, amazing.
3
That's
locations.
that's a party right there. 22 people. I love it. So
Where a lot of my time goes.
I can only imagine. Keeps you busy. So Gerardo, let's touch on feedback mechanisms. How do you gather feedback from referring attorneys about their experience with your firm, and how is this feedback used to improve your services? Or do you have, do you use, do you have that mechanism in place? Do you have a scale or a system that you use for this purpose?
Sure. And I think, Laura, you've known me for a few years and you know that I'm a pretty conversational, open guy. So that's always my go-to. We have some automated surveys and things like that we've been working on, but I don't think that gives you the feedback that having an open conversation with somebody at a lunch, at a dinner, at their office, whatever may be going on. Like, hey, what was your experience like? What could we have done better? And I really mean that. I know people always ask that, but like I really try to dig it out of them. I'm like, hey, no, they'll say, oh, everything was great. I say, okay, now be honest.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, now tell me. Well, how was it? Oh, no, seriously, it was really good. So we really try to go to them and be like, hey, what would you prefer? Do you want more updates, less updates, quicker payment? What is it? Anything that you could give me? And people are usually, once you start kind of insisting, they're pretty, especially lawyers, they love to talk. So they'll start opening up a little bit and say like, oh yeah, there's this one time I called and it took like a week to get an email back. So we really try to work on that and see what hiccup may have been along the road, if any. Sometimes there weren't any.
And you are both so friendly, so nice as people, plus attorneys. So it just makes it easier for everybody, I'm sure, to open up and, answer questions and make this whole process easier.
Oh, yeah.
So Cameron, how do you see the future of case referrals evolving in the legal industry, especially with advancement in technology, artificial intelligence, communications?
This is what I'm definitely going to refer to Gerard.
Okay, our technology guy.
And I come from like a family of older people. I was raised by older people, so I literally am like, I'm the handwritten thank you note era.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm gonna give it to this guy.
Okay.
Well, I mean, obviously it's evolving fast, and through things like the portal, through things like automation, we are able to kind of better serve and organize these referral relationships and payment to these referral relationships, direct deposits, wire transfer, things that have been around for a while, but maybe underutilized. So we make sure that they're not having to come here to pick up a handwritten check, or that we find time to coincide and I can hand deliver some or put it in the mail. And we know what happens with the mail in Atlanta. It either makes it or it doesn't. And just play the lottery.
Mhm.
Do we know what happens to the mail?
No, I guess we don't. Uh, So we really tried to automate that side of it.
Interesting.
And of course, with the
Mhm.
systems and the software that we can track where things are. And if somebody wants to say, how many cases did I send you this year? We can easily pull that up with the click of a button
That's
and
wonderful.
show them a chart if they want to.
Mhm.
So that's kind
Mhm.
of how I think it's evolving, and it's going to make it better.
Would you be willing to share your software with others and make money out of it? Just a thought.
Maybe I'm going to work on being a developer.
Okay.
We can do that.
So now we are going to switch our focus from lawyer referrals to clients considering legal representation. Gerardo, how can you explain the process your firm uses to uncover all possible insurance coverage for a client's case? What steps do you take to ensure that no potential coverage is overlooked?
Only because I've personally seen her do this over and over again. I'm gonna let Cameron answer it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You must be good at that, huh? Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's going to sound very simple,
Mhm.
but it's like the number one way. Talk to the client,
Mhm.
bring them in, see their face, bring their family with them. If they have a husband, if they have kids, if they have a parent, an elderly parent that lives with them, bring them in, talk to them. What is their day-to-day life? What do they drive? Where do they work? What do they do? That's my number one way. Like, get to know your client on the front end, obviously, because that's when we're going to establish all these areas of coverage. So I just like to get to know them, because you'd be surprised at actually listening to them and not just reading an intake script or talking to them over the phone for 30 minutes. We did intake the other day that I ended up talking to them for like an hour and 45 minutes, and it's a very specific case. But the more and more I talked to her, the more information that kind of came out, and she wasn't even realizing it. And I was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And so then I was like, okay, you and your husband, I'm going to see you guys in 2 days. You'll come to my office. So I realized that her husband had a lot of information that she wasn't really able to answer, but I heard things come in and out of it that was interesting. So that's pretty much kind of what I do. It's a really personal level. And I think the more you get to know somebody, the more you figure out. And then we'll send letters, of course, like any law firm would. But we're not afraid of sending letters and being like, oh, nothing's here. I mean, we'd rather send out the letters based on what we think might be possible to then and find out, okay, we've sent all these out. This is what's come back. Here we are.
And I'm just curious, is this gift of inquisitiveness, or I don't know, curiosity, was that God given, or is that something that you learned as you are going through the law?
Ooh, I don't know. It's probably a nature. You want to Freud me today? It's probably a little bit of both, honestly. But I'll tell you this: my dad's a very big on not being an introvert. He was always big on that. Even when I was a kid, he would be like, we'd be at the grocery store, and he'd be like, "Go ask that lady how she's doing, and why she chose that color of or kind of eggs versus the other brown or white eggs or whatever, or go ask that lady how she's doing today if she needs help." And I was like, "No, Dad, and he's like, "Why? What's wrong with you?"
He was just
nothing's wrong with me.
I love it.
So he just pushed me to go talk to people, and then I just kind of didn't bother me anymore.
You challenged your curiosity from early on. That's the way to do it with kids.
But talk to people that are strangers. You realize, like, after you've gotten over the anxiety of it all, you realize like that was a cool conversation that I never otherwise would have had.
Yes.
So you start to find the good in it, and then you just kind of start talking to everybody.
Absolutely. Very nice. So, Cameron, I would like to touch, I know if you didn't get tired of talking yet, but I would like to touch on your communication channels. How does your firm's communication strategy enhance your client experience, particularly regarding access to attorneys and staff? Does the case management portal the one that you have, offers any advantages to your clients with busy schedules? And everybody has busy schedules.
Everybody does. Absolutely. And the portal's wonderful, mainly because I will say this, a lot of people, if they have taken pictures of a crash or pictures of a wound, they have it on their phone, right? And so a lot of times they can't figure out how to share it via email, or, they'll just start texting it to our cell phone if that was the only way we could communicate with them. And then it gets lost in transition and everything like that. So the portal, you can send images, you can send text. And if they think about it at, 12 o'clock at night and they just shoot it, we'll see it, we'll see it immediately. But I mean, somebody will see it the next day. All of our trilingual staff, they all have access to it. So, if there's a client that speaks Spanish and I'm on it and I speak some Spanish, but, I need somebody to really get in there with process. Then, I will have them assigned to the case. So if a communication comes in the portal, then like, for example, Alvaro, one of our staff members that speaks Spanish and English, he just immediately hops in and answers the person, and then he will get with me if there's something that needs further attention.
Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that we do too, is you kind of touched on it. I just
Mhm.
want to jump in. We get some cases that come from other places, and people tell, oh, well, I never actually spoke to the lawyer. And that's something that to this day, I mean, 11 years later, I still don't quite understand. And not to knock anybody that's out there doing it. I know people get busy and they have a different model, but everybody's spoken to a lawyer at this office.
That's that is very, very unusual, actually, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, and maybe you know the answer. I know people, maybe they're
Mhm.
focused on the high level work and just talking to people isn't where they're at. But like Cameron alluded to earlier, that's part of the intake. That's part of that's where you get information. Then they know who they're working. That's why we have such a low attrition rate on our cases. We're not constantly getting drop letters from other, like, that's just not, people are happy when they're here. You know, it's the real world. Sometimes people aren't, but most of the time it's the experience that we've been able to kind of deliver. And I think we get more value out of it just because we're able to settle the case easier. We're able to get to where we want to, even when the result isn't ideal, they're happy. And that's part of what we've tried to focus on as a firm.
And that's a goal. And the reason why, I mentioned, it's really rare, and it's hard to imagine nowadays, but a lot of firms, unfortunately, I would say I'll make up statistics. I would say probably 90% of my clients who are, calling us with legal funding needs never talk to the attorney, or they would give me an email address or name. I was like, I think that person is paralegal or case manager, which is nothing wrong at all. But they would think that, that's the attorney that they've been talking, for a year or year and a half.
And that might be their main point of contact, which is fine. But they're just know that there is a legal backing behind it with a lawyer that's overseeing and still talking to the client, getting approvals and doing that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I think it also goes to the client communication too. Like, I mean, it is exactly about that because, it's efficient. Like we're thinking, okay, how long does it take to talk to each client? What's efficient use of time? As lawyers, we're like constantly work-life balance, what's time efficiency? What's efficient for my, time spent on this versus if I got somebody delegated the task or whatever. And so, I've found that the more you communicate with the client, especially in the beginning and just, then like as Gerard said earlier, you can kind of have some paralegal help tag team with you as it starts to tote. Like if it's been filed and we're waiting for responses, not much going on, treatment's completed, that's a stage where like, hey, we let the client know we're waiting for 30 days, whatever, if something pops up, let us know. Otherwise, reach out if you want to, touch base. We'll, let them know when to expect communication.
Sure.
But I think if you talk to the client more in the beginning, you figure out the weaknesses and the strengths of the case. You figure out like if the client's terrified of testifying, absolutely deathly terrified, like this is a case I need to like hit it hard in the beginning to see if I could possibly settle this because this person is going to fall apart if it comes to litigation. So those are ways, and you're just hemorrhaging expenses, and if that client is not capable of following through on that, then where's the expenses going, So it's kind of like the more you get to know the client in the beginning and really just carrying it through, that will just tote your case.
That totally makes sense. I know, Gerardo, your law firm. Did I ask that question? I did not. Okay.
Hey.
And I'm getting blind too. I'm not wearing glasses. I've been prescribed glasses twice, but they're not working. So I'm still blind. Okay. still blind. I'm getting blind there. So seriously, I'm like, Okay. I know, Gerardo, that your law firm goes out of your way to make sure that your approach is intentionally client-centric. Can you share some examples of how your team goes above and beyond for clients, especially in challenging situations like power outages, during depositions, or in any other unforeseeable situations?
Well, I mean, I think they speak best. If you were to go online and read some of the reviews they've left, I mean, the clients themselves are testifying to that. We have some case managers that have been invited to baby showers and weddings and things like that because people are just so grateful for the service they received here. This kitchen's break room in here is constantly filled with baked goods from some of my clients and things that they bring as like their way to show gratitude. And being there for them through this and actually listening and understanding what it is they need. Because this copy paste approach to every case that it's mass volume, it's this, it's just send the man, get the check, send the man, get the check. There's more to this than that. And if that really is what I do for a living, then count me out. Because then, I'd be bored day one. So we're always hunting for something else, like a better purpose, a bigger purpose for the case. And inevitably that translates to it being client-centric because while it's a little selfish from my internal needs of what I need to be doing something with meaning, they are the beneficiary of that hunt. So rising tide lifts all ships, right? And that's kind of my approach to it.
100%.
Yeah.
Cameron, what are your thoughts on the holistic legal support? What I mean by holistic is that how does your firm provide comprehensive support to clients who may have multiple legal needs beyond personal injury? And what resources do you offer to help them navigate these issues? And I'm sure that happens more often than you would like to.
Oh, definitely. I think any attorney can speak to the fact that we get a case and then about 12 cases grow in that 1 year. I mean, I guess one of our, I think, assets with it is that we're all pretty seasoned in different areas. Immediately when I left school, I was a DA for a long time, and I was immediately put into the grind of major trials, and the government has limited resources. So they don't really care if you're 1 year out of school. They're like, it's okay, just go for it. And you're like, okay. So, I've got a lot of criminal background, wills, estates, probates, magistrate, divorce, family law, and those aren't things that we focus on primarily. The knowledge that we have, we can at least either help them with it if it's something that we think we can help with it, or if it's something that's a little bit more complicated, or maybe a conflict with our current case, we will basically explain to them what's going on and what we would recommend, and then help them find somebody that can help represent their needs in the best way. That way, they're always taken care of. They can always communicate to us about what's going on, because we never want the client to feel like they can't tell us something. That's like every attorney's worst fear, right? So you don't want them to surprise one day, oh, I didn't feel like I could tell you. I'm like, oh God, well, you should have. That's my fault you're afraid, but you should have.
So it may be a good idea. If I was an attorney, I probably would say to every of my clients, on the first day, it would say, I'm your psychologist for this meantime as the case is going on. So you must tell me everything.
Tell me everything. Yes.
Tell me everything, good and bad.
Good, bad, and what you might think is insignificant, because we might see that it's not.
Very much so.
So, and Will has a background of real estate, so, and we have all different kinds of experience in our background. So I think that kind of helps to play. A lot of people have gone straight into either insurance defense and then went to plaintiffs, or they went straight to plaintiffs, or maybe they, did something else for a few years and then went to that. But both of us, or all three of us, I believe, we've all worked at different firms and different levels. So we have enough experience between all of us to either handle it ourselves or to find them the right person to fit their needs.
Very diverse background. That's wonderful. It is important to consider post-case care. Let me just re-say it. It is very important to consider post-case care. Why is it important for your firm to maintain relationships with clients after their cases are closed or after the case closes? Can you describe the ongoing support you provide to ensure all aspects of a client situation are resolved, Gerardo?
I mean, when 80 to 90% of your cases come from referrals, existing client referrals, it is obviously a relationship you need to nurture. So being there for them post issuing of a check, whether it's a large settlement and they need financial consulting, whether it's, ongoing medical care needs and recommendations that they need, we have to be there for that. Those people are walking billboards for us. They are out there singing our praises to everybody. And that's how we've been managed. These people spending $300,000 a month in advertising, trying to get that case. All I did was call my guy 2 months after the settlement and see how he was doing.
That's amazing.
So it's that kind of approach that I think people forget about, and not maliciously. You just get tied up in work and it's busy. You got things you got to do that are hot on the iron, but you got to structure it and organize yourself to a way where you can do that. And I think it's going to pay dividends.
And do you normally give those calls or text messages, or one of your staff members does it?
I figured out that some of them do it on their own because they built that relationship with the client. But yes, typically if it's a case I originated, and I know Cameron's the same way if she originated, I know Will does too. So we try to follow up with our clients personally.
That's so great. Cameron, what are your thoughts on social media awareness? What advice would you give, or do you give clients regarding their social media activity during the ongoing case, and why is this precaution necessary?
Well, we always tell them this. We always say, listen, we come from a social media world now where everything's put out there, and there's this kind of like hidden layer of acceptance now that goes around with everybody's posts and stuff, but they're not trying to get that for you. And a lot of people will think, okay, well, if I'm just little old me and I'm posting on my social media, State Farm doesn't care.
Mhm.
Oh, they do.
Oh yeah, they do.
So, and that's an easy way. I mean, we do it all the time trying to find witnesses, first thing, social media, because we're trying to figure out who they are, where they're from, what do they do? And everybody, we all are a product of that generation now. And so we all have that. But I always tell clients this, I say, they're going to interpret it a different way than you would maybe otherwise have meant for that post, or meant for the significance of that post to be. And they're going to change it and use it against you, just like they would if you're talking to them before you got a lawyer. They're going to be like, oh, well, are you really injured, and go on from there. So the client doesn't necessarily even realize what they might be putting out there, that they will be turned against them. And so I always just tell clients, listen, it's a small amount of time, and it protects you, it protects your case, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you, now to go ahead and just not be posting about things, your treatment or anything else, because you may not realize what another person's going to try to interpret it as and use it against you.
So true. Gerardo, we started this episode with your opening comments, and let's close it with your thoughts as well. I want to talk about how your firm navigates insurance negotiations. What common pitfalls your clients face when dealing with insurance companies, and how can your firm assist them in avoiding these traps? Why is it crucial to, for clients to consult with the lawyers like yourselves before signing any agreement with insurance companies?
Well, that's a good question, because Cameron and I, we've all seen how their tactics have evolved, and it's a fluid situation. They're getting trickier, they're getting wiser, and they're reaching out to people preemptively. They're offering them $1,000, $2,000 for this, for that, and they make it sound like it's just to get you through, and then they're having you sign a full release that the case is over. Or maybe you got your car fixed and you got a document and you signed it thinking, oh, this is about my car. My lawyer told me I could talk to them about the car, but not about my injury. So let me go ahead and deal with the car. And you get this piece of paper and it's a release again. And it's important that, it's like terms and conditions and agreements. Everybody checks the box. Yeah, I read it and continue. You can't do that in this type of case. You actually either have to sit through and read it, or you have to get somebody that knows, that reads them every day, to go through it with you and be like, yeah, you're good, you can sign, or wait, don't sign that, because it could kill the whole case. And now you're climbing uphill trying to invalidate an agreement that you willingly signed as a consenting adult. So that, I think that's something that's happening live, and it's getting worse, I would say.
So once agreement with insurance company is signed, there's no way for you to take over that case?
Never
or
say
make
no
a case
way.
out of it?
I would never say no way, but it definitely puts you in a bad position. Yeah.
That's something to keep in mind for everybody. Okay.
Well, they say ignorance of the law is no defense. And that goes back to my DA days, people come in, well, I didn't know that you couldn't have this and this and this. Well, unfortunately, that's the way the world looks at it. That's the way our world looks at it in the US, ignorance of the law is no defense. So
it's not what they said.
Yeah, it's the same thing in that situation. Although you would think your insurance company has a duty to be honest and protect you, they don't have a duty to explain it to you, really. I mean, they do to an extent, but there's nobody over there governing over their shoulders saying you didn't do this, and then them having a repercussion for it. So it's kind of like the Wild Wild West in that way. They really have free reign, and until repercussions are bestowed upon them, and until that time, they have us.
Right. That's it. Again, that was so great. I hope this episode about beyond referrals and how this law firm works your case as clients' cases was informative and educational. And as promised, I have one pop-up question for each of my guests today. You guys ready? Okay. So Cameron, what's your guilty pleasure when you need a break from the intensity of your work?
You're gonna laugh at this. Fishing.
I
love fishing. I like flats fishing. We go out deep sea fishing. We love spear fishing. Spear fishing is one of my favorites because you're underwater and everything just kind of stops for a minute. And in case like a shark creeps up or something. But it's good to have someone with you that's there in front.
I love it.
But we love fishing. And it's always something that I feel like it just gives you a break from reality, even if your mind is busy and you can't seem to stop what's going on inside. it kind of forces you to by completely changing your environment. And then also you're focused on a task.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure you're getting the right reel, you're getting the right bait, you're doing it the right way, you're, jiggling the line if it's a certain type of fish you're trying to get. And so, that like little, I guess, task keeps you just busy and occupied enough to like kind of let the rest go. So that's a therapeutic thing for me.
I love it. Amazing. How often do you go fishing?
Well, when we lived in Tifton, we went all the time because it's only like an hour away. We haven't gone as much now we're in Atlanta, but I think once we get through the wedding and everything, we're going to have a little bit more time to kind of try to make that a periodic thing because it's really not as far as you think. So, preferably once every other month would be, ideal.
Yes. And congratulations again on the upcoming wedding. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And Gerardo, who or what inspires you most in your work? And how do you channel that inspiration into your cases?
I'm going to go with probably an unpopular answer, but it's going to have to be the GOAT, Tom Brady. My dog's name is Brady.
Yes. I just saw him. He was looking at me while I was setting it up.
Yes. He's probably wondering what's in those bags. Food.
we'll check him out. No food. Sorry, Brady.
Well, yeah, I think his level of dedication to his craft, and anybody who sees that, not just football, but when you apply that to anything else, it's admirable and it turns it into a passion. Even if something that you didn't think was a passion, it easily turns into one, because you're so sold and all in with it. So to him, nothing mattered more than winning. Nothing mattered more than being the best at what he did. And I think that's what better driving force than that.
Very inspirational. Couldn't agree more. Gerardo and Cameron, thank you so much again for this amazing time spent with you both today. If anyone needs your professional help or is looking for chiefs, Briceno attorneys at law, how can they reach you? Do you have the website, social media resources, email, text, anything you can share with everybody?
Of course. Yeah, our website is Chiefs Briceno. That's CHEVESBRICENO.com. Our number here at the office, 404-482-3330.
Okay. Love it. Absolutely. That was again attorney Gerardo Briceno and his law partner, Cameron Roberts with Chiefs Briceno Attorneys at Law. I want to thank you all for listening and watching our episode today. For more tips and tricks on legal, funding, and personal injury related topics, follow me, like and subscribe for It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast on several podcast platforms, including but not limited to Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and others worldwide. And follow More Injury Funding on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, and my Google business profile, and of course my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see you, my dear listeners and viewers, again soon. Until then, be well. Thank you.